Chapter 39 The Guests. In the house in the Rue du Helder, where Albert had invited the Count of Monte Cristo, everything was being prepared on the morning of the 21st of May to fulfill the engagement. Albert the Morcerf inhabited a pavilion situated at the corner of a large court, and directly opposite another building, in which were the servants' apartments. 2 windows only of the pavilion faced the streets. 3 other windows looked into the court, and 2 at the back into the garden. Between the court and the garden, built in the heavy style of the imperial architecture, was the large and fashionable dwelling of the Count and Countess de Morcerf. A high wall surrounded the whole of the property, surmounted at intervals by vases filled with flowers, and broken in the center by a large gate of gilt lances, which served as the carriage entrance. A small door, close to the lodge of the concierge, gave ingress and egress to the servants and to the masters when they were on foot. It was easy to discover that the delicate care of a mother, unwilling to part from her son, and yet aware he required the full exercise of his liberty, had chosen this habitation for Albert. On the other hand was visible the intelligent egotism of youth, enchanted with the free and idle life of a young man. By means of these 2 windows, looking into the street, Albert could see all that passed. The sight of what is going on is so necessary to young men, who wish always to see the world traverse their horizon, be the horizon but the street only. Then, should anything appear to merit a more minute examination, Albert Morcerf could follow up his researches by means of a small door similar to that close to the concierge's door, and which merits a particular description. It was a little entrance that seemed never to have been opened since the house was built, so entirely was it covered with dust and dirt, but the well-oiled hinges and locks announced a frequent and mysterious employment. This door laughed at the concierge, from whose vigilance and jurisdiction it escaped, opening, like the door in the Arabian Nights, the open sesame of Ali Baba, by a cabalistic word or a concerted tap without from the sweetest voices or whitest fingers in the world. At the end of a long corridor with which the door communicated, and which formed the antechamber, was, on the right, Albert's breakfast room, looking into the court, and on the left the salon, looking into the garden. Shrubs and creeping plants covered, fan-like, and windows, and hid from the garden and court these 2 apartments, the only rooms into which, as they were on the ground floor, prying eyes could penetrate. On the first floor were the same rooms, with the addition of a 3rd, the antechamber. These 3 rooms were a salon, a boudoir, and a bedroom. The salon downstairs was only an Algerian divan for the use of smokers. The boudoir upstairs communicated with the bedchamber, and by an invisible door with a staircase, it was evident every precaution had been taken. Above this door was a large studio, which had been increased in size by pulling down the partitions. A pandemonium in which the artist and the dandy strove for preeminence. There were collected and piled up all Albert's successive caprices, hunting horns, flutes, a whole orchestra, for Albert had had not a taste, but a fancy for music. Easels, palettes, brushes, pencils, for music had been succeeded by painting. Foils, boxing gloves, broadswords, and single sticks, for, following the example of the fashionable young man of the time, Albert de Morcerf cultivated, with far more perseverance than music and drawing, the 3 arts that completed a dandy's education, i.e., fencing, boxing, and a single stick. It was in this apartment that he received Grisser, Cook, and Charles Lecour. The rest of the furniture of this privileged apartment consisted of old cabinets of the time of Francis I, cabinets filled with china and Japan vases, faïences of Luca della Robbia, plates of the Bernat de Palissy, old armchairs, in which had perhaps reposed themselves for Henry IV, or Sully, Louis VIII, or Richelieu. For 2 of these armchairs, adorned with a carved shield on which were engraved the fleur-de-lis of France on an azure field, evidently came from the Louvre, or at least some royal residence. On these dark and somber chairs were thrown splendid stuffs of bright colors, dyed beneath Persea's sun, or woven by the fingers of the woman of Calcutta or of Chandernagor. What these stuffs did there, it was impossible to say. They awaited, whilst gratifying the eyes, a destination unknown to their owner himself. In the meantime they filled the room with their golden and silky reflections. In the center of the room was a piano in rosewood, of roller and blanchet, of small dimensions, but containing an orchestra in its narrow and sonorous cavity, and groaning beneath the weight of the chef d'oeuvre of Beethoven, Weber, Mozart, Haydn, Grétry, and Porpora. On the walls, over the doors, on the ceiling, were swords, daggers, Malay creeses, maces, battle axes, suits of armor, gilded damasked, and inlaid dried plants, minerals, and stuffed birds, opening their flame-colored wings as if for flight, and their beaks that never close. This was the favorite sitting-room of Albert. However, the morning of the appointment, the young man had established himself in the small salon downstairs. There, on the table, surrounded at some distance by a large and luxurious divan, every piece of tobacco known, from the yellow tobacco of Petersburg to the black tobacco of Sinai, the Maryland, the Puerto Rico, and the Latakia, was exposed in those pots of crackled earthenware of which the Dutch are so fond. Beside them, in boxes of fragrant wood, were ranged, according to their size and quality, pearls, regalias, Havanas, and Melinas, and in an open cabinet a collection of German pipes of cheap oak, with their amber mouthpieces ornamented with coral, and of narghiles, with their long tubes of Morocco coiled like serpents, awaited the caprice or the sympathy of the smokers. Albert had himself presided at the arrangement, or rather the symmetrical derangement, which, after coffee, the guests at a breakfast of modern days love to contemplate through the vapor that escapes from their mouth and ascends in long and fanciful wreath to the ceiling. At 9:45, a valet entered. He composed with a little groom named John, and who only spoke English. All Albert's establishment, although the cook of the hotel was always at his service, and on great occasions the Count's chasseur also. This valet, whose name was German, and who enjoyed the entire confidence of his young master, held in one hand a number of papers, and in the other a packet of letters, which he gave to Albert. Albert glanced carelessly at the different missives, selected 2 written in a small and delicate hand, and enclosed in scented envelopes, opened them, and perused their contents with some attention. "How did these letters come?" said he. "One by the post. Madame Danglars' footman left the other. Let Madame Danglars know that I accept the place she offers me in her box. Wait, then, during the day, tell Rosa that when I leave the opera I will sup with her, as she wishes. Take her 6 bottles of different wine, Cyprus, sherry, Malaga, and a barrel of Ostend oysters. Get them at Boros, and be sure you say they're for me. At what o'clock, sir, do you breakfast? What time is it now? 9:45. Very well, precisely at 10:30. Debray will, perhaps, be obliged to go to the minister, and besides, Albert looked at his tablets. It is the hour I told the Count, 21st of May, at 10:30, and though I do not much rely upon his promise, I wish to be punctual. Is Madame la Comtesse up yet? If Monsieur le Vicomte wishes, I will inquire. Yes, ask her for one of her liqueur calories. Mine is incomplete, and tell her I shall have the honor of seeing her about 3 o'clock, and that I request permission to introduce someone to her. The valet left the room. Albert threw himself on the divan, tore off the cover of the 2 or 3 of the papers, looked at the playbills, made a face at perceiving they played an opera and not a ballet, hunted vainly amongst the advertisements for a new tooth powder of which he had heard, and threw down, one after the other, the 3 leading papers of Paris, muttering, "These papers become more and more stupid every day." A moment after, a carriage stopped before the door, and the servant announced Monsieur Lucien Debray, a tall young man with light hair, clear gray eyes, and thin and compressed lips, dressed in a blue coat with gold buttons, a white neckcloth, and a tortoise shell eyeglass, suspended by a silken thread, and which, by an effort of the superciliary and zygomatic nerves, he fixed in his eye, entered, with a half-official air, without smiling or speaking. "Good morning, Lucien. Good morning," said Albert. "Your punctuality really alarms me. What do I say? Punctuality. You, whom I expected last, you arrive at 5 minutes to 10, when the time fixed was half past. Have ministers resigned?" "No, my dear fellow," returned the young man, seating himself on the divan. "Reassure yourself. We are tottering always, but we never fall, and I begin to believe we shall pass into a state of immobility, and then the affairs of the peninsula will completely consolidate us. Ah, true, you drive Don Carlos out of Spain." "No, no, my dear fellow, do not confound things. We take him to the other side of the French frontier, and offer him hospitality at Bourges." "At Bourges?" "Yes. He has not much to complain of. Bourges is the capital of Charles VII. Do you not know this? Why, all Paris knew it yesterday, and the day before it had already transpired on the bourse. And Monsieur Danglars, I do not know by what means that man contrives to obtain intelligence as soon as we do, made 1,000,000. And you another order, for I see you have a blue ribbon at your buttonhole." "Yes, they sent me the order of Charles III," returned Debray carelessly. "Come, do not affect indifference, but confess that you are pleased to have it." "Oh, it is very well as a finish to the toilet. It looks very neat on the black coat buttoned up, and makes you resemble the Prince of Wales or Duke of Richstadt. Is it for that reason you see me so early? Because you have the order of Charles III, and you wish to announce the good news to me?" "No, because I passed the night writing letters, 25 dispatches. I returned home at daybreak and strove to sleep, but my head ached, and I got up to have a ride for an hour. At the Bois de Boulogne, ennui and hunger attacked me at once, 2 enemies who rarely accompany each other, and who are yet leagued against me, a sort of Carlist Republican alliance. Then I recollected you gave a breakfast this morning, and here I am. I am hungry. Feed me. I am bored. Amuse me." "It is my duty as your host," returned Albert, ringing the bell, whilst Lucien turned over, with his gold-mounted cane studded with turquoises, the papers that lay on the table. "Germain, a glass of sherry and biscuit. In the meantime, my dear Lucien, here are cigars. Contraband, of course. Try them, and persuade the minister to sell us such instead of poisoning us with cabbage leaves. Pest! I will do nothing of the kind. The moment they come from government, you will find them execrable. Besides, that does not concern the home but the financial department. Address yourself to Monsieur Human, section of the indirect contributions, corridor A, number 26. On my word, said Albert. "You astonish me by the extent of your acquaintance. Take a cigar." "Really, my dear Count," replied Lucian, lighting a manila at a rose-colored taper that burned in a stand beautifully enameled, and leaning back on the divan. "How happy you are to have nothing to do. You do not know your own good fortune." "And what would you do, my dear diplomatist," replied Morcerf, with a slight degree of irony in his voice, "if you did nothing? What? Private secretary to a minister, plunged at once into European cabals and Parisian intrigues, having kings, and, better still, queens to protect, parties to unite, elections to direct, making more of your cabinet with your pen and your telegraph than Napoleon did of his battlefields with his swords and his victories, besides 25,000 francs a year, besides your place, a horse, for which Chateau Renaud offered you 400 louis, and which you would not part with, a tailor who never disappoints you, with the opera, the jockey club, and the varieties. Can you not amuse yourself? Well, I will amuse you." "How?" "By introducing you to a new acquaintance. A man or a woman?" "A man. I know so many already. But you do not know this man." "Where does he come from? The end of the world?" "Farther still, perhaps." "The devil! I hope he does not bring our breakfast with him." "Oh, no. Our breakfast comes from my mother's kitchen. Are you hungry?" "Humiliating as such a confession is, I am. But I dined yesterday at Monsieur de Villefort's, and lawyers always give you very bad dinners. You would think they felt some remorse. And did you ever remark that?" "Ah, depreciate other persons' dinners. You ministers give such splendid ones." "Yes, but we do not invite people of fashion. If we were not forced to entertain a parcel of country boobies because they think and vote with us, we should never dream of dining at home, I assure you. Well, take another glass of sherry and another biscuit." "Willingly. Your Spanish wine is excellent. You see, we were quite right to pacify that country." "Yes, but Don Carlos?" "Well, Don Carlos will drink Bordeaux, and in 10 years we will marry his son to the little queen. You will then obtain the golden fleece if you are still in the ministry. I think, Albert, you have adopted the system of feeding me on smoke this morning. Well, you must allow it is the best thing for the stomach. But I hear Beauchamp in the next room. You can dispute together, and that will pass away the time." "About what?" "About the papers." "My dear friend," said Lucian, with an air of sovereign contempt, "do I ever read the papers?" "Then you will dispute the more." "Monsieur Beauchamp," announced the servant. "Enter, enter," said Albert, rising and advancing to meet the young man. "Here is Debray, who detests you without reading you, so he says." "He is quite right," returned Beauchamp, "for I criticize him without knowing what he does. Good day, Commander." "Ah, you know that already," said the private secretary, smiling and shaking hands with him. "Of course. And what do they say of it in the world?" "In which world? We have so many worlds in the year of grace, 1838. "In the entire political world, of which you are one of the lions. They say that it is quite fair, and that you sow so much red that you must reap a little blue." Come, that is not so bad," said Lucian. "Why do you not join our party, my dear Beauchamp? With your talents you would make your fortune in 3 or 4 years. I only await one thing before following your advice, that is, a minister who will hold office for 6 months. My dear Albert, one word, for I must get poor Lucian a respite. Do we breakfast or dine? I must go to the chamber, for our life is not an idle one. You only breakfast. I await 2 persons, and the instant they arrive we shall set down to table."